Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started.
Gravitas, co-presented by
SBI Mutual Fund, a partner for life.
Chemistry that matters. SABIC. Skoda Superb, best in next class.
Co-powered by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist.
Cyber and maritime security, health cooperation, and the stability and prosperity.
Any alliance needs commitments, and the strength of the alliance depends on your willingness to meet those commitments. It's the same with the Quad, the Quadrilateral Initiative. A group of India, Japan, the US and Australia, long touted as the answer to China's aggression, once again proving to be not up to the task. I say this because the Quad met today. The meeting itself was significant and symbolic. In the middle of a pandemic, with each country facing its own set of challenges, the foreign ministers flew all the way to Tokyo for this meeting. The press dubbed it as the Asian NATO, the military alliance of 4 major countries. But the Quad ended the meeting without so much as a joint statement. They're told it's not their custom. Be that as it may, the Quad needs to set clear goals now. It needs to show intent for it to achieve anything. They're talking about expanding, bringing in more like-minded members on board. But until they resolve to do something and spell it out in so many words, what's the point of such meetings and groups? On Gravitas tonight, we'll discuss what the Quad achieved today, the kind of promise it still holds, and what members must do to achieve their full potential. Also on the show, more proof that Turkey is stoking the Armenia-Azerbaijan clash. It is sending Syrian fighters to Nagorno-Karabakh. We'll bring you the very latest. The US president is out of the hospital less than a month before the election. Controversies over Donald Trump's health refuse to die down. In Pakistan, the foreign hand has reared its head again. Prime Minister Imran Khan says India is propping up the opposition protest. And a new battle over Basmati. India wants to geotag the rice it sends to the world. Which country is objecting and why? We'll tell you, but first, as always, Gravitas Global Headlines.
Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has made his first video appearance since he was discharged from a Berlin hospital. In the interview given to a prominent Russian YouTube blogger, Navalny says that he is considered as a threat and was poisoned by Russian authorities ahead of parliamentary election. Once again confirming the sad state of affairs in Pakistan, a survey has revealed that a majority of Pakistanis fear that the country is moving in the wrong direction, citing unemployment, inflation and poverty as major concerns. The survey was conducted by France-based Ipsos, the world's third largest market research company. Nepal is staring at another lockdown as the coronavirus case tally has surpassed China. Nepal's COVID-19 cases rose by 2,440 to a total of 89,263 on Monday. India has started a travel bubble with Bhutan in a bid to facilitate easier movement between the two neighbors. Bhutan is the third country in South Asia after Afghanistan and the Maldives, with which India now has a transport air bubble. In a victory for President Nicolas Maduro, a British appeals court has overturned a judgment which legitimized UK's recognition of opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's president. At the heart of the legal battle is the question of who controls the gold worth $1 billion stored in the Bank of England. The case now goes back to the High Court to determine which of the two rival leaders is in charge. Roger Penrose of Britain, Reinhard Genzel of Germany and Andrea Ghez of the US have won the Nobel Physics Prize for their research into the black hole. Penrose won half the prize for using mathematics to prove that black holes are a direct consequence of the general theory of relativity. Genzel and Ghez shared the other half for discovering that an invisible and extremely heavy object governs the orbits of stars at the center of our galaxy. Shocking pictures have emerged from Russia's Far East as hundreds of dead sea creatures washed up on the Pacific Ocean coastline. Authorities have admitted that the level of pollution in the water is higher than normal, but said that the exact cause of death is still not clear. The world's largest surviving marsupial carnivore, the Tasmanian devil, has been returned to the wild on Australia's mainland for the first time in 3,000 years. Actor couple Chris Hemsworth and Elsa Pataki joined conservation groups last month to release 11 of the animals into a wildlife sanctuary in the New South Wales, with more releases to follow. Third seed Elina Svitolina has crashed out of the French Open after a shock defeat to world number 131 and Nadia Podoroska in the quarter-finals. Svitolina was bidding to reach the semi-finals at Roland Garros for the first time in her career, but she was completely outplayed by Podoroska in a 2-6, 4-6 defeat. Podoroska has created history by becoming the first women's qualifier in the Open era to reach the semi-finals of the French Open. British cyclist Geraint Thomas has pulled out of the Giro d'Italia with a fractured hip. The 2018 Tour de France champion was dropped by Team Ineos for the sport's most iconic event earlier this year, but was one of the pre-race favorites for the season's second Grand Tour. However, a crash just before Stage 3 on Monday left the 34-year-old severely injured, and although he finished the race, he ended up losing more than 12 minutes on the race leader. A scan on Monday was inconclusive, but a second one on Tuesday morning showed a fracture.
Our cover story tonight is about a meeting. It happened in Tokyo. It was watched by the whole world. This was a meeting of the Quad, or the Quadrilateral Initiative, an alliance that could be the world's answer to China's aggression. The United States, Japan, India and Australia make up this alliance. It's not a new one. The Quad first came up in the year 2007, but member countries were wary of China. They did not want to upset the dragon. So the attempt to join forces was half-hearted, often a victim of politics. The Quad made news, but made no difference. It cannot afford to play safe now. It must rise to the challenge because each member stands to lose if China gains the upper hand, and yet joining forces is easier said than done. Can the Quad be rebooted? An effort was made today. The foreign ministers of India, Japan and the US and Australia held a meeting. They also met Japan's new Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. They held a round of discussions. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo wasted no time. He blamed China for the Wuhan virus cover-up.
As partners in this Quad, it is more critical now than ever that we collaborate to protect our people and partners from the CCP's exploitation, corruption and coercion. We've seen it in the South and East China Seas, the Mekong, the Himalayas, the Taiwan Strait. These are just a few examples.
Mike Pompeo went to Tokyo with a clear agenda. America wants to institutionalize the Quad, make the relationship formal, shape the Quad on the lines of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO. And that's the reason why many experts are calling the Quad the Asian NATO. But it's not the same as NATO, not by a long shot. The Quad is still an amorphous, precarious group, heading in the right direction, albeit slowly. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar did not name China in his remarks, but he did bring up territorial integrity and apparent reference to the ongoing border standoff in Ladakh.
As vibrant and pluralistic democracies with shared values, our nations have affirmed collectively the importance of maintaining a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. We remain committed to upholding the rules-based international order underpinned by the rule of law, transparency, freedom of navigation in international seas, and respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty and peaceful resolution of disputes.
All four Quad allies are fighting their own battles with China. India on the line of actual control in Ladakh, Australia on the trade front. It wants to halt Belt and Road projects. It has called for a probe into the origins of the Wuhan virus. Japan has been complaining about Chinese intrusions near the Senkaku Islands, and America is in a full-blown trade and diplomatic war with the Chinese. So all these four players have a good reason to join hands. The question is, where do they go from here? Will this be a military alliance? The members talked about a range of issues today: counter-terrorism, maritime and cybersecurity, development finance, 5G and the Indo-Pacific. China is a central theme in all of this, but oblique references will not be enough anymore. Concrete action is the need of the hour. The Quad holds a lot of promise. As far as sales pitches go, the world is sold on its potential. But today's meeting ended without even a joint statement. Each member issued an individual statement. If they cannot bring themselves to issue a statement together, how will they counter the dragon together? Which brings us to the record of the Quad, not very inspiring. It has been around for 13 years and has remained a non-starter. The objectives were always the same, now better defined and more urgent than before, but fundamentally the same: to counter China's growing aggression. The problem is that the Quad was shy of saying it out loud. Will that change now? Here's a report.
4 countries, one agenda: stop China's efforts to dominate the Indo-Pacific. The threat isn't new, neither is the alliance. But in the past, the Quad has been shy of openly declaring its intentions. India, Australia, Japan and the United States make up the Quadrilateral, or the Quad. They met for the first time in 2007. A few years before this, these countries had joined hands for ad hoc relief operations after the 2004 tsunami. The Prime Ministers of India, Japan and Australia met with the then US Vice President Dick Cheney. The first Quad summit happened on the sidelines of the ASEAN Forum. Since then, the idea of the Quad has been around. It has even made news, but fallen short of taking any substantive action. A decade later, in 2017, the alliance was resurrected. The members of the Quad had a working level meeting. And now, in the middle of a pandemic, the foreign ministers have met in Tokyo. There is a clear sense of purpose, an urgency to take a harder stand against China.
As partners in this Quad, it is more critical now than ever that we collaborate to protect our people and partners from the CCP's exploitation, corruption, and coercion. We've seen it in the South and East China Seas, the Mekong, the Himalayas, the Taiwan Strait. These are just a few examples.
America is not mincing words. The others are talking with their actions. Australia's Department of Defence has named China in its strategic assessment as a threat. It says that China is engaged in an active pursuit of greater influence in the Indo-Pacific. The report says that such actions could undermine stability in the region. India is already locked in a border standoff with China. Since May this year, New Delhi has imposed curbs on Chinese investments. More than 100 Chinese apps were banned by India. And Japan's territorial disputes in the East China Sea have flared up again. Japan was also the country that first proposed the Quad. Now it is playing host to the meeting of foreign ministers.
Events of this year have clearly demonstrated.
So what will the Quad do? The United States wants the Quad to have a clear military dimension. Reports say it is considering inviting the air forces of Quad allies for training at the Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. The Guam Air Base is a key United States military facility in the Pacific. It may also be China's first target if hostilities escalate between Beijing and Washington. Last month, the Chinese Air Force released a propaganda video that simulated an attack on the Guam base. But eagle-eyed fact-checkers were quick to point out how Chinese propagandists stole clips from Hollywood movies to make this fake video. In recent months, China has made its intentions clear. It is picking more fights and staking claim on more territories. The time is right for the Quad to move beyond being a symbolic alliance. It must set out clear objectives, and each ally must commit to tangible contributions. They could start by naming China as the common enemy first. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
2017 was a big year for the Quad. The group was revived. Do you know what was the trigger? China's Belt and Road Initiative, debt trap diplomacy. The Quad wanted to counter all of that. Cut to 2020 now. China has exported the Wuhan virus. The virus has killed more than 100,000 people in India, 215,000 in the United States, nearly 1,600 people in Japan, nearly 900 in Australia. Beijing is also fighting a border conflict with India, a trade war with the United States, punitive taxes on Australia, territorial disputes with Japan. It makes all the sense for these countries to join ranks. But then what? What do they want from the group they've formed? Look at the statements that they made today. Japan talks about infrastructure and cybersecurity. Australia wants an open Indo-Pacific. America vows solidarity against China. And India urges respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty. So is this just another alliance with a common adversary? Another grouping in the alphabet soup of geopolitics? We have SAARC, NATO, G7, G20, ASEAN, BIMSTEC, SCO, and now the Quad. Is it even an alliance? Not in the formal sense of the word. There is no formal mutual assistance treaty. The Quad does not have a secretariat, or for that matter, not even a website. US President Donald Trump is not a fan of alliances. India prefers fighting its own wars. Japan already has a military alliance with the US and Australia, so why do we need the Quad? As I said, it's more of a coalition, an amorphous group. And for it to make a difference, it will have to be more than that. What is the Quad's objective? A quote-unquote free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific. And by Indo-Pacific, it means this region, the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and the area around it. Which country poses a threat to all of this? China. China has militarized the South China Sea. Now, for the Quad to ensure peace, it must be proactive, not reactive. It cannot pull off another Philippines, drag China to the court and then watch it dismiss the decision. China is not famous for following the law. It understands the language of power and strength. So for the Quad to be successful, it must come out as a military coalition. The US has already increased its deployment in the South China Sea. In the month of June, India and Japan conducted a joint exercise in the Indian Ocean. In the month of July, India and the US conducted maritime drills in the Indian Ocean. Japan is now a part of the annual Malabar military exercise. It began in 1992 as a bilateral naval exercise between America and India. There's a lot of talk about Australia joining these drills. So together, the Quad can make a formidable force. Look at the numbers. China has an army of 2 million. The combined army of India, the US, Japan and Australia is 2.2 million. Chinese Navy, the strength is 240,000. For the Quad, the naval forces stand at 760,000. What about the Air Force? The PLA has 398,000 troops. The Quad, 455,000. It makes sense for this to be a military coalition. Here's something else that the Quad needs. Clear geostrategic goals. There's already talk of expansion. Earlier this year, a teleconference between Quad members had 3 special invitees: New Zealand, South Korea and Vietnam. They were called the +3 countries. And they joined to talk about the Wuhan virus pandemic. You see, earlier China was viewed as a threat only to the Indo-Pacific, but now it is being seen as a global threat. And at a time like this, the Quad will find resonance the world over. But first, the members will have to show intent and commitment. Put their money where the mouth is. Speak out without mincing words and hiding behind diplomatic jargon. For all the hype around this meeting, they did not even issue a joint statement. What kept the Quad members from jointly condemning the Ladakh standoff? From slamming China for snooping on the world? What kept them from calling out China's bullying tactics and, above all, for exporting a virus? The Quad, we say, is an idea whose time has come, but ideas need implementation. A strong force needs to speak the language of strength, speak jointly about global peace and multilateralism. The Quad hasn't done any of it yet. So we have 4 countries taking on China or appearing to take on China. Will Beijing stay silent? It won't. China is already mounting a counter-offensive against the Quad. It has gone to the World Trade Organization, the WTO. It is complaining about the ban on Chinese apps in India and the US. It happened last week at a closed-door meeting. A Chinese delegate raised the decision to ban apps like TikTok and WeChat. He said such bans violate WTO rules and that there is no evidence that Chinese apps pose a national security risk. Now, reports say Beijing will file a formal complaint against India and the US. It may file one. And that's a bit rich coming from China because it's a country that is a serial violator of free trade rules. Time and again, China has been accused of unreasonable restrictions. Multiple complaints have been filed at the WTO. In 2018, the United States filed a trade case against China. It accused Beijing of denying American companies basic patent rights. The idea was to stop Chinese entities from using their technology even when the contract has ended. Then we have Canada. Canada accused China of placing unfair import restrictions on Canadian canola seeds. Earlier this year, China lost a major case at the WTO. The European Union had moved a complaint against Beijing. This was over subsidies to Chinese industries. The EU had said that China subsidizes its companies to a great extent, especially steel and aluminium manufacturers. And this allows Chinese companies to undercut global competitors by a large margin. The EU fought the battle for 4 years. Ultimately, it managed to secure a win. So you get the pattern. China has tried to bend the WTO to its will, and others have complained repeatedly. In January this year, 3 members asked the WTO to ban various types of state support to companies. The US, the EU and Japan put forward this proposal. They called for a ban on market-distorting subsidies. The long and short of it is this: China's complaint about the app ban is blatant hypocrisy. China has banned all popular social media networks from the mainland. It has banned news websites that expose the Communist Party. Our own website, WIONnews.com, was banned this year by the Chinese firewall for exactly the same reasons. Experts say that if China files a complaint against the app bans at the WTO, it can be counter-sued. So will Beijing still go ahead? We'll keep you posted on that. For the moment, let's turn to another story that is making headlines the world over. A night of intense violence in the capital of Kyrgyzstan. The parliament was stormed, so was the president's office. Protesters were out on the streets. They wanted a rerun of Sunday's disputed election. After the mayhem on Monday night, the authorities have finally relented. There will be another election. Here's a report.
There's trouble brewing in Central Asia's only democracy, Kyrgyzstan. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets. What do they want? A re-election. Kyrgyzstan had parliamentary polls on Sunday. The election was disputed. 2 parties close to the president won half the vote. Observers and critics say the vote wasn't fair. There are reports of large-scale vote buying. Overnight, the protests turned violent. Government buildings were seized, high-profile leaders freed from jail. Kyrgyzstan has seen this before, in 2005 and 2010, when mass revolutions toppled presidents. This is what happened on Monday night. This is Kyrgyzstan's parliament. Protesters surrounded the building and eventually broke in. They gathered on the floor of the parliament, chanting slogans and waving the Kyrgyz flag. Some even made it to the president's office. Videos on social media showed official papers being thrown from windows. Even the president's portrait was destroyed. For a brief moment, the government of Kyrgyzstan appeared incapacitated. In the chaos that gripped the night, protesters managed to free the country's former president from jail. Almazbek Atambayev was serving an 11-year jail sentence on corruption charges. He was once an ally of the current president, but they had a falling out post the 2017 elections. Protesters say the release was a civil affair, that security officials did not even try to stop them. Out on the streets, clashes intensified. Security forces hurled stun grenades and tear gas at protesters. One protester was reportedly killed. 600 others were injured. Bishkek was a city under siege. President Jeenbekov addressed the nation, appealing for calm.
Dear people, last night some political forces attempted illegally to overthrow the government. They used the elections as an excuse and severely violated public order. They did not leave the people in peace. I call on everyone to keep the peace, not to succumb to provocations, not to break the law. Peace in the country and the security of the people are more important than anything.
The election body has cancelled the poll results. Foreign powers, especially Russia, are hoping for a quick resolution. Kyrgyzstan falls under Russia's sphere of influence, while Moscow has urged for internal stability. President Putin will be confident knowing both parties in the ongoing power struggle are keen on close ties with Russia. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now for the latest from Nagorno-Karabakh, a region that is caught in a volatile conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan and a proxy war between Turkey and Russia. Last week, we brought you an exclusive interview of Armenia's president, Dr. Armen Sarkisyan. He blamed Turkey for the clashes. Sarkisyan called Turkey the creator of this conflict. And now we have proof of how Turkey is inflaming these tensions. Multiple reports have come out and they say Turkey is recruiting fighters from Syria and sending them to fight for Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh. Erdogan is openly backing Azerbaijan. Russia is supporting Armenia. Let's tell you about the extent of Erdogan's support. Turkey has transported Syrian mercenaries or fighters to the battleground. They have Turkish arms. Turkish planes are giving air support to Azerbaijan's offensive. Reports say a Turkish F-16 shot down an Armenian warplane last Tuesday. Turkey is paying Syrian fighters to fight for Azerbaijan. Around 1,500 Syrians have been deployed to this region. According to reports, these are members of the Syrian National Army, the opposition militias backed by Turkey in the Syrian war. And these fighters have been offered a 4-month contract. Each month, they are paid $1,500 each in Turkish lira. For those who are killed in action, their families are entitled to a compensation of about $7,800. More than 50 Syrians are believed to have already died in this conflict. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad too has confirmed that Syrian fighters are fighting on behalf of Turkey, and he has called President Erdogan the main instigator of this conflict. Turkey has become a headache for the West. For the longest time, Turkey has been a reliable NATO partner. In exchange, Western nations equipped the Turkish forces with the most sophisticated of weapons. But then Erdogan started tightening his hold on power and the West began regretting arming Turkey. Because Erdogan has not only dismantled democracy, he's picking fights to gain power on the world stage. Look at what he's done in the past few months. He has supplied weapons and fighters to the government of national accord in Libya's civil war. Erdogan almost triggered a conflict with Greece in the eastern Mediterranean. He's very much a player in Syria, and now he's instigating Azerbaijan. Canada is one of the countries that armed Turkey. And now Canada has been forced to suspend exports. On Monday, it suspended the export permits issued to Turkey. Canada had first agreed to sell sophisticated Canadian drone technology to Turkey, and reports say that Turkey has been using Canadian military tech in the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. In fact, Canada has made the same mistake twice. Last year, it froze military shipments to Turkey. This was after Erdogan ordered an incursion against the Kurds in northern Syria. But Canada lifted the freeze in the month of May. Now it seems to be regretting that decision. The fighting has entered the 10th day today. Urban centers are being bombed. Civilians are facing the fire. The international community is calling for a ceasefire, but Turkey keeps pushing Azerbaijan. Today, the foreign minister of Turkey criticized the ceasefire efforts. He was in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan.
We have come here to show Turkey's and Turkish people's support to Azerbaijan to the whole world. Today, Azerbaijan is fighting to free its own lands under your leadership. It has the power and the capacity to do that. As Turkey and the Turkish nation, we are ready to give all kinds of support to Azerbaijan at any time and in every field it needs.
The message to the world is pretty clear. Turkey is openly instigating a conflict. It is now a hostile force. The time has come for the world, the West in particular, to rethink its military supplies to Turkey and initiate bold action against the Erdogan regime. Let's turn to what's happening in a friendly country for Turkey, Pakistan. Imran Khan is facing a multi-front battle. Pakistan's economy is tanking. The country is staring at an FATF blacklist, and the Prime Minister is facing a united opposition. Prominent opposition leaders of Pakistan have joined hands against their Prime Minister. 11 opposition parties have formed an alliance. It's called the Pakistan Democratic Movement, PDM. The aim is to oust the Imran Khan government, and to achieve this goal, leaders across party lines, from the PPP's chief Bilawal Bhutto Zardari to JUIF chief Fazlur Rahman, they've all come together. They're voicing their displeasure with the army's interference in Pakistan's internal affairs and the dangers facing Pakistan's institutions and the country's stability as a whole. The alliance is looking to enlist lawyers, farmers, students and the media, and they're looking to hold their first rally on the 16th of October. That's 10 days away. The Prime Minister of Pakistan seems to be in panic. Let me tell you what he's up to. The Prime Minister has unleashed all state agencies on former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Why? Because this entire opposition movement is being steered by Nawaz Sharif, who's currently in exile in London. Pakistani courts have declared Nawaz Sharif a proclaimed offender. This was in a graft case. The first verdict came on the 10th of September. 10 days later, opposition parties launched their alliance. They held a joint press conference, and Nawaz Sharif attended from London through a video link. He criticized Imran Khan. He called him an inefficient man who is not operating from the parliament. Where is he operating from then? The army headquarters in Rawalpindi, perhaps. Nawaz Sharif also criticized the ISI and the Pakistani army. He called Imran Khan an army stooge. On the 28th of September, Imran had Shehbaz Sharif arrested, Nawaz Sharif's brother. The opposition was undeterred. On the 1st of October, Pakistan banned Nawaz Sharif's speeches. On what grounds? Pakistani authorities said that news channels will not be allowed to air speeches of absconders and proclaimed offenders. None of it seems to be working, though. So Imran Khan is now playing his favorite card, the India card. Imran Khan claims that India is helping Nawaz Sharif. He's apparently 100% sure of this. One of Imran Khan's assistants has even gone to the extent of claiming that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Nawaz Sharif in Nepal. Now, here's a question. Why would India help Nawaz Sharif? Imran Khan does not have an answer to that. I will tell you the reason behind this preposterous claim. Imran Khan has nothing to tell his voters. the opposition is building heat, slamming him for the unaccounted wealth of Pakistan's CPEC chairperson, Asim Bajwa, calling the Prime Minister an ineffective man. How will Imran Khan prove otherwise? Pakistan does not have economic numbers. It does not have allies. It does not have credibility. The only option before Imran Khan is hate-mongering and discrediting his critics. So the Prime Minister is trying to gather support by portraying the opposition movement as pro-India and so anti-Pakistan. This is his only hope to stay on in power or win some votes in the upcoming election in Gilgit-Baltistan. Unfortunately for him, no one is subscribing to the plans yet. Here's something else that Imran Khan is doing. His plate is full. Why then is he fighting for basmati rice? Pakistan has opposed India's claim for a GI tag for basmati rice. Believe it or not, India wants the long grain rice to be known as an Indian origin product, a variety exclusively grown in India. But Pakistan has protested. It is holding meetings in the middle of a pandemic to challenge India's GI tag. Talk about priorities. Our next report has all the details.
Find a rice lover and ask him or her the meaning of basmati. The answer is likely to be biryani. It may also be luxury. Now ask Pakistan what basmati means. It would say battle. Pakistan has opposed India's claim of GI tag for basmati in Europe. Wondering what it means? Well, GI stands for geographical indication. It is a sign used for products of specific geographical origin. Darjeeling tea, for example. As the name suggests, the tea is grown exclusively in India. The tea's taste and aroma are unique to these Indian hills. The Darjeeling tea was the first Indian product to get a GI tag. This was in October 2004. In September, India applied for the GI tag for basmati in the EU, meaning that in the European Union, the long-grain rice would be known as an Indian origin product. Basmati is grown in various parts of India. India is looking for a GI tag for the variety grown in these states: Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand, the outskirts of Delhi, and parts of Uttar Pradesh. India applied for the exclusive recognition at EU's official registry. When Pakistan got a whiff of it, it started crying foul. What is Islamabad saying? According to local media reports, Pakistan is arguing that it too is a major producer of basmati. Really? Pakistan produces 35% of the world's basmati. India dominates 65% of the market. India's basmati is also held at a more premium position. It is priced more than Pakistani basmati. Do you know why? Because the rice is defined by its quality and aroma. Starting 2017, Pakistan tried to double its basmati exports, but that has not helped its cause. India produces 7.5 million tons of basmati rice and exports around 4.5 million tons of it. In 2019, India earned 34,000 crore rupees from basmati exports. The battle for basmati is not new. New Delhi has always been possessive about its basmati. In the 1990s, India took on an American firm that wanted a patent under the Texmati brand. India won the case. Basmati has always been associated with India. If Pakistan wants a GI tag for the rice, it would have to prove that basmati is grown in its country. Even the sound of it spells impossible. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In the US, Donald Trump is out of the hospital. After 3 nights at the Walter Reed Medical Center, the president is back at the White House. He arrived on board Marine One wearing a white surgical mask. there was the trademark thumbs up to the press pool as he made his way to the White House. So far, so good. But once he reached the White House portico, the mask was off. It was photo shoot time. Trump was soaking in all the attention after being holed up at the hospital. And that too in prime campaign season. He spent around 10 minutes on the portico recording a statement for his Twitter followers. It took a couple of takes before the president got his remarks right. But all this while, he remained unmasked and in close proximity with his team, which makes you wonder, did Donald Trump really mean it when he said he had learned a lot about the virus? We'll tell the president, let the president, in fact, tell you in his own words.
Don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently. And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left. There's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune. I don't know. But don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there. Be careful. We have the best medicines in the world, and it all happened very short.
I'm sure he meant it as a way to encourage people. That was the President of the United States wondering out loud whether he is immune to the virus. Turns out he is not. Nobody is immune to the Wuhan virus. On Twitter, Trump was back to downplaying the pandemic. He once again compared COVID-19 to the seasonal flu. Trump thinks the flu is more lethal, a claim that scientists have already busted. The president's irresponsible messaging has many experts worried. Some of the president's supporters already believe that the pandemic is a hoax, that it's being hyped up by the Democrats. These comments from the president will only add fuel to the fire. What about the campaign trail? What does Trump's White House return mean for his campaign? Not very much. As long as he remains positive for the Wuhan virus, he will have to make do with virtual rallies, a huge blow for a leader like Trump, who is in his elements when surrounded by adoring supporters. As for his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, he's been on the campaign trail. He was in Florida on Monday, a state that Donald Trump won in 2016. He beat Hillary Clinton by a margin of 1.2%, clinching the state's 29 electoral votes. One thing is clear. Donald Trump's path to retaining the White House runs through Miami. Biden's message in Florida centered mostly around the pandemic. He said the president was responsible for catching the virus as he continuously refused to wear a mask.
I would hope that the president, having gone through what he went through, and I'm glad he seems to be coming along pretty well, would communicate the right lesson to the American people. Masks matter. These masks, they matter. It matters. It saves lives. It prevents the spread of the disease. Anybody who contracts the virus by essentially saying masks don't matter, social distancing doesn't matter, I think is responsible.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama had a similar message. She accused the president of downplaying the pandemic and, most importantly, of not having a national plan to deal with it.
With millions and millions of Americans left reeling from the worst job losses in recent history, with small businesses closing their doors for good, he and his party dragged their feet to provide necessary relief for people whose lives have been decimated under his watch. 7 months later, he still doesn't have a plan for this virus. 7 months later, he still won't wear a mask consistently and encourage others to do the same, even when those simple actions could save countless lives.
Less than 30 days for the election, and we've got some new opinion polls too from 6 crucial swing states in the United States. In Wisconsin, Pennsylvania and Michigan, Biden is leading Donald Trump. But in the other 3 states, North Carolina, Florida and Arizona, the battle is neck and neck. The Democrats will be wary of these polls. By the end of the day, it's the Electoral College that matters, not the popular vote. So what can you expect in the coming days from this election campaign? Well, the second debate is scheduled for the 15th of October, just 5 days from now. And Donald Trump intends to participate. Biden says he's ready as well, as long as doctors and experts give the green light. Even if the debate does go ahead as planned, President Donald Trump's support team is likely to be much smaller than in Ohio because the White House is now a coronavirus hotspot. Which brings us to this story. The outbreak at the White House. It has its own Wikipedia page now, by the way. Around 30 staffers have tested positive so far. There are countries with fewer number of cases than the White House. But it's not the only global power center which has turned into a hotspot. There's the European Commission, for example. Almost 180 people at the Commission's headquarters in Brussels have contracted the Wuhan virus. Its president, Ursula von der Leyen, is currently self-isolating. Last month, the European Council president entered self-quarantine. He later tested negative. But with the president in quarantine, the EU summit in September had to be postponed. There were cases in the Kremlin as well. Early on in the pandemic, some staffers at the Russian presidential office tested positive. It is not clear how big the cluster was. But the outbreak in the White House has been the most talked about. At the European Commission and the Kremlin, it was staffers who tested positive. No one close to the heads of state, let alone key associates. But in the US, both the president and the first lady have COVID-19. So does the president's press secretary and close aides like Kellyanne Conway and former governor Chris Christie. Outbreaks at power centers could have a bearing on world politics. The smooth and seamless bureaucracy in these offices is what keeps the world ticking. Now, the land of the pharaohs has yielded another stunning discovery. Mummies that are said to be almost 2,600 years old, 2,600 years. It couldn't have come at a better time for Egypt. The country is desperately looking to boost its tourism industry. Here's a report.
The sands of Egypt have revealed yet another treasure, a cache of 59 coffins, estimated to be 2,600 years old. They were discovered from a sealed well in the vast Saqqara necropolis, south of Cairo. Inside are mummies of priests and clerks from Egypt's 26th ruling dynasty. Even by Egypt's standard, this is a major discovery.
I'm very proud that this discovery of today, with 59 wooden coffins in perfect condition of preservation, was done by Egyptian mission and Egyptian hands. This discovery, the entire 59 wooden coffins, will be displayed in the Grand Egyptian Museum.
The first batch of these new coffins were discovered last month. 13 containers from a 36-feet well. They are part of a series of major finds emerging from Saqqara. Hundreds of tombs, including those from the first dynasty, are buried here. Saqqara is part of the ancient Egyptian capital of Memphis, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The newly discovered coffins are in good shape. One of the sarcophagi was opened in front of the assembled reporters and diplomats. Inside was a perfectly preserved mummy. Egypt's antiquity minister believes this is just the beginning, that more coffins still remain undiscovered inside the burial site.
So today is not the end of the discovery. I consider it's the beginning of the big discovery.
It could be a while before the public can get a glimpse of these coffins. They are headed to the Grand Egyptian Museum in Giza, along with the sarcophagi discovered from Luxor last year. The museum has been under construction for a long time now. The opening, which has been delayed multiple times, is scheduled for 2021. Tourism is the mainstay of Egypt's economy, but the industry have been hammered by the pandemic. Such discoveries will be crucial in rekindling interest, which explains why the government invited a large group of journalists and diplomats to the unveiling ceremony. The message is clear. Spread the word about Egypt, the land that keeps throwing up centuries-old treasures. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
With that, it's a wrap. We're leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.